My guest today is Marina Diamandis, better known by her stage name of Marina and the Diamonds. And just over 10 years ago, I suppose, Marina began a music career that led to 3 top 10 albums, lots of hits, lots of success. And then she slightly dropped off and disappeared 3 years ago. But she's just come back with a new album and a tour and a new name. You changed your name. No longer is it Marina and the Diamonds, it's just Marina.
Yes.
So welcome, and explain that first. The artist formerly known as Marina and the Diamonds is now just Marina.
I love saying FKA Marina and the Diamonds. Yeah, I am now going under my first name, Marina, and there's not really a huge reason behind it. It just felt like a natural decision for me. And I spent 10 years of my life under Marina and the Diamonds, exploring a lot of topics that were connected to identity, personas in pop. And I just wanted to simplify the way that I function and interact with the world as an artist, and to distill what I do into like a very singular message. So the name change has encouraged me to do that, and it just feels right.
I mean, was Marina and the Diamonds more of a creation? And Marina is more just...
Yeah, exactly. And it was kind of unwittingly as well. When I first came up with the stage name, I didn't really think about it too deeply. I just liked the idea that it sounded like a group or a community, but I was actually a solo artist. Now I feel like I want to do things differently.
Now, you've always been a little bit different in that you know, you're not a conventional pop star. You're not you know, you don't play the pop star game, or haven't played the pop star game on the whole. And you talked about much more serious topics than a lot of people, and about the industry quite openly, and about your sort of struggles with it. I mean, why did you stop in 2016? Why did you decide you wanted to quit?
Because I felt like my connection to music and performing had changed, and that freaked me out a lot. Because for me, the first 10 years of my career, I was writing music because I needed to write on an emotional level, but also I feel like a lot of what I did was motivated by ego, and as it is for a lot of artists, especially when they're younger.
So you had this constant tension between the draw of being a pop star and the need to write music.
Yeah, but also perhaps not just being drawn to being a pop star. It was more thinking that that's what I should want. And actually, like you said, I'm not a traditional pop artist, whatever that means these days. I just needed to have a break, because I was worried that I didn't feel as passionate anymore. And I thought, if I'm not led or driven by ego, maybe it means that I'm not going to be a good artist anymore. I couldn't see how I could write good music without like needing praise from other people. I was just like, that part of me is dead.
Were
and
you
I
always
couldn't
very
see that it
intense
was a positive thing.
About your music? I mean...
Have I always been intense about it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was my whole life. It was my whole life. And I didn't really have a life outside of that. I didn't have much of an identity outside of that, because it was so drawn up in being Marina and the Diamonds, and, you know, using my life as inspiration for my work.
Can we sort of wind back to the beginning about how it all started?
Yes.
Because you weren't a sort of a manufactured pop child or anything, were you? I mean,
I wasn't.
Did you learn music as a child?
I tried, Krishnan, to be a manufactured pop child. I did try to do girl band auditions, but I never got the job.
So what was childhood like?
I grew up in Athens and Wales, in a little village in Wales, from the age of 4. I didn't have any musical training to speak of, and I mean, up until I was about 18, I was like very studious in school. I was actually going to go to university to do media studies, and then I announced to my parents that I actually wanted to be a singer and a songwriter, and they were just very bemused. because I'd never sung before and I'd never written a song.
Had you studied music
No.
at school or anything?
I mean, I did violin and flute when I was 14, but that was it.
And so, where did it come from? I mean, was it something you'd always really thought you'd secretly harbored?
I had
never
secretly
talked
harbored.
about?
Yeah, I hadn't talked about it because I didn't want anyone to say that I couldn't do it. But I knew that I should be doing this because I love words. I love writing lyrics, and that's kind of like the thing that powers my whole experience as an artist. It always starts with lyrics. It's never like, oh, I've just thought of an amazing chord progression. It's like I have something I need to say or work out for myself, and that's why I write.
So when did you start writing a song?
20.
That was when you began?
Yeah, and then 4 years later I got signed. So it was quite a fast-tracked process.
How? I mean, that's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, but it didn't feel fast at the time. It was just like, oh my God, how am I like gonna get this done? How am I gonna get signed? It was a lot of, actually, one thing that I hope people listening to this might take encouragement from. There was a lot of failure, like a lot of going to open mic nights, having a really bad time, a lot of embarrassment of like not singing well, a lot of rejection from labels. And I think because I just kept trying, and if something didn't work, I wouldn't get disheartened. I'd say, well, I'm just going to try something else. And I was always very determined. And that eventually led me to getting signed.
And how were you making a living?
I was a waitress at lots of different places because I couldn't hold down a job. I actually hated retail and waitressing because I got bored so quickly. So I would usually do these temp jobs, doing like film premieres, you know, house parties at like wealthy people's houses. And then at some point I thought, you know what, I think I should go to university and I should get a student loan so that I don't have to do these jobs every single day, and I can spend my time songwriting, and I can buy a laptop so I can start producing my own songs. And that's what I did. So on the last day of clearing, I just picked a uni, which was University of East London, and I went and studied music there. So I did that for 2 years to be able to not have to work as much.
Right. Okay. But then how did you become successful? Were you discovered?
I was, I suppose, on MySpace. My current record label, actually, they found me on there. And at the time, I wasn't quite ready to be signed. So when I'd written a lot more songs and got a bit more confident, then I got a record deal.
So what was the dream at that stage? I mean, why were you doing it? If you talked about this tension between sort of ego and needing to write.
Yeah, and art. I can't really explain it any other way than I had a very strong instinct that music was a very good vehicle for me to talk about things. The reason that I love pop artists like Madonna, for example, is that they've used this vehicle almost like as a Trojan horse in a way to talk about things that are important socially and culturally, and to put them into a pop song that will be played all over the world. I thought that was a really interesting way of being able to talk about social issues.
So you saw the power of pop very early on?
Exactly.
I mean, did you have a load of things you wanted to say to the world, or
things that were important to me? I didn't know if other people would find them important, but for me, it was a process. Songwriting was a process of trying to understand things that I was thinking about or feeling, especially as a woman as well, because back in 2008, it was a very different landscape for female artists. And even just as a young woman, it was really different.
in what way?
I mean, the type of female role models that we had, or just the way that we saw women represented in media, was completely different. At the time, we were still looking at a lot of girl bands whose main currency was the way that they looked, which there isn't anything wrong with that, but we didn't have other types of artists to balance that view of women.
Give me some examples. What do you mean?
When you see an image, let's say Girls Aloud, girl band full of, beautiful women. When you see primarily those types of artists in the pop landscape, you compare yourself to them as a young girl. And if you don't see, other types of artists who you might actually really relate to, that's quite difficult. And I think at that time, it was a really exciting time because we had artists like Lily Allen coming out, Amy Winehouse was out, and they were like forging a new way for female artists. But 2 years before that, it was like the women that I saw on the internet were all size 0, for example, and that was really damaging to me. Like, I really was affected by that.
How?
Thinking that I should look like that and that would make me acceptable.
Do you mean generally or acceptable within the music industry?
Within the music industry and likable to other people.
And
Like,
did people in the
that's how
music
I
industry
processed
reinforce that? I mean, with the people you met?
Thankfully not, because my music was so left of centre that they didn't expect me to be pop. I think it was a shock to them when I actually had commercial success, because they were like, she's an oddball. How has this happened?
And do you think you were an oddball?
Yeah, definitely.
In what way? I mean, what is an oddball? Oddballs are good, aren't they? I mean,
yeah, I think they are. Just the way that I expressed myself. I mean, even before I got signed, I was being courted by 14 different labels, and I didn't have a manager. And I'd chosen not to, because I split up with my other manager. He was managing another artist, and he was too busy. So I thought, well, I'm going to do these meetings myself. And the feedback that I got and the rumors that I heard within the music industry was that I was like crazy, unhinged, and, just all round like a mad person. And though I have an eccentric side to me, I think I was getting those comments because I was really confident and assertive. And I think people didn't understand that. They were like, well, I need to meet you with a manager. Like, why are you doing all these meetings? And in the end,
it's very revealing, isn't it? And terrible, actually, that the words people used that were, she's bonkers.
Yeah,
crazy,
like, she's unhinged because
Yeah.
she's like daring to be confident. It's just, I don't get it. And I still don't.
And why did you have 14 record labels queuing up? Was that the power of the internet?
That was, yeah. And also, it's just, that's how the industry works. When they get a sniff of someone who might, potentially be big, they then all start to contact your lawyer and say, they'd like to meet up with you to discuss if, they want to sign you.
And once you're in the industry, what's it like? I mean, when you're suddenly having this quick success, how are people treating you, and how were you coping with the expectations of the music industry?
It's a good question, because not very well. I found it really stressful. And actually, I didn't really enjoy my first album campaign because of that, because I was so anxious all the time. But the last album, it was a different experience, and this one has been too. So I think it's quite a polarizing experience, because it's an odd job to have, and you can't really compare it with many jobs, just in terms of not even like being known or being famous or whatever, but the actual lifestyle of being on tour and traveling a lot is weird. And that's something that you can't really underestimate the effect of.
I've heard you talk about the difference between your first and second albums, before, in terms of how you were encouraged to work with different people. What do you think has been the overall experience of that, and where have you ended up with this latest album? So the order, if you like, was you wrote your first album yourself.
Yeah, it was like half-half.
And then the second one
was
you were thrust together with all sorts of superstar collaborators.
Yes, yeah.
And what was that like? Just not enjoyable.
There were moments that were enjoyable, but again, I am a very anxious person, and I found it really anxiety-inducing, because I also wasn't that confident in those environments when you're co-writing. It is quite an exposing experience anyway, and so if you don't know that person, it can take a while. And
then for the third album, you came back to being in control of it.
Yes, and I wrote it completely alone, and I produced it with one producer, which I definitely needed to do.
And that was a much happier experience.
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
And so if you got to the end of this sort of happy experience, why did you want to stop?
Well, the creating it was nice, and actually, you know, promoting it and being on tour was nice, but I just knew from the start of promoting it that something had changed in me and that I didn't have the same motivations anymore. You know, it's like if you do something for 10 years, then if you've stopped growing within that job and its vocation, then you just think, what am I doing? What do I have to contribute? I don't want to go through the motions with anything ever. And that's why I thought, well, if I feel like this, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to put a record out. I can't ever imagine just doing something because I have to earn money or like satisfy a label. That's not why I became an artist.
So what changed?
Why did I start writing again? I think it was because I allowed myself to quit. Because for the first year, I was like, I just said to my management, I'm not sure if I really want to do this anymore. But I still dabbled in it, and I was still writing a bit, because it's not easy just to stop working. You're like, what else can I do in my life? And so...
What's your transferable skills?
Exactly, because I've been doing this since I was 22. In 2017, perhaps, I fully allowed myself to quit. And I was like, you'd never have to do this again. 3 albums is enough. You know, just see what else is out there. What are you interested in? And at that point, I'd done an acting course. I'd done a floristry course. And then I thought, well, actually, a lot of my reading material is like psychology based. And so I enrolled at University of London at Birkbeck. And I did 6 months there studying modern psychology and understanding personality. And I loved it. And that seemed to rebalance me. And I started to write out of pure joy again. So that was, for me, the turning point.
What was it about psychology that drew you?
I just really like understanding how people work.
I mean, was it for yourself, do you think? Were you learning for yourself, or were you learning because you were interested in psychology and other people?
Yeah, more in other people. For example, one of my essays for that module was about attachment theory, which is the theory basically states that your early relationships in infancy can really colour your adult relationships in later life. And so each of us has a different attachment style. It's either secure, which is when, you know, you've probably had both parents around, your needs have been responded to, or you have 3 different types of insecure attachment. That was one of the things that I really found interesting in that module. We did a lot of Freud's psychoanalysis stuff, which I was less interested about. But yeah, it was a really nice time for me. And it was a nice time for me to start writing again as well.
So that unlocked something again, did it?
Yeah, I think the pressure to not write music was really healthy. And also just to be in normal environments where you're not like the focus of your everyday life. It's boring, you know. It's boring to do that every single day.
And so are you approaching it any differently?
What, music?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even doing something like this today is really refreshing. And I would much rather be doing types of promotion that is like genuinely engaging when we're talking about issues outside of music as well as inside, than always doing photo shoots or, you know, one-liners somewhere. I think you just have to figure out what you're actually interested in, what's important to you, and then build your life around that and your career. I think it will work.
So what are the big themes in this record that you're hitting?
So my 4th record is called Love and Fear. When I listened to the songs I'd written, it felt very odd to put them on one record. There were 16 songs. I noticed that a lot of the songs could be divided up between songs that were written from a place of love and songs that came from a feeling of fear. and the themes on love are very much about unity, and that hasn't been like something that I've done on purpose, but I am influenced by politics, or whatever's going on in society, even though I know nothing about politics. I think that's been a theme that's been very difficult for a lot of people to grasp and to see what's been happening all over the world. We've had a lot of social change in the past 3 years. Another is...
let's stick with that. I mean, how has that affected you at all? What's been going on around you? I mean, if you say, I know nothing about politics, a lot of people say that, without really stopping to think, well, actually, we're all political beings to some degree. We all have, the vote and conversations, and we care and believe in things, which I know you do as well. So, I mean, how have you been affected by seeing what's been going on over the last 2 or 3 years in this country?
I would say I've been more affected by events in America in a way. It's not to say I haven't been affected by things like Brexit, because I have, but just seeing how racism is still present is so disgusting to me, and it's so upsetting. Sorry.
We've all cried about this,
at
different times, and I think particularly racism is one that goes right to the gut.
Yeah, it just feels so anti-human, and I think we're at a time socially where we've been able to absorb and try and understand what's happened in the past 3 years to, with events in the UK, in America, all over the world, but it's very painful to see that some people's realities still involve racism and misogyny as well, or homophobia. I just feel like it's so hard for me to accept that people are anti-human beings.
Is this based though on personal experience, or the experience of friends, or just what you're seeing as an observer on the media, on social media, whatever?
I think it's all three, really. I mean, in terms of racism, I'm Greek, but I'm white, so I've never really experienced that. But I have friends who certainly have. And, in terms of being a woman, I feel very aware of the progress that's happening and the changes that are being made, and the way that in which we view women as multi-dimensional people, as we view men. But there's still a lot of hurt there, I think, for a lot of women, particularly in how women are treated in the media. I did a post recently on Twitter listing all the ways that I could think of that women were shamed. And that went from, being too fat, being too thin, being beautiful, not being beautiful, wearing makeup, not wearing makeup, having kids, not having kids, being a working mother, being a stay-at-home mother, being confident, being assertive. I know that men get shamed in different ways too, but it just seems like the female experience is like, it has to change. It just has to. Because I'm not going to put up with it anymore. I don't want to make myself small or make myself different to who I actually feel like inside, just to, be palatable to society. And I know that a lot of other women feel the same.
How much do you feel it affects you personally, though? Because a lot of people would assume, look, you're a successful artist, you're presumably pretty well off, come from a nice background and nice family as far as the world knows. You must have had it easy.
Whether I've come from a good background or not doesn't matter. Even for me, as an artist who is supposedly in a powerful job, I've had a lot of flippant comments made by male co-workers about my body, and I don't find that appropriate. But it's only till recently that I genuinely felt that wasn't appropriate. I always used to laugh it off or be like, you can't say that in a studio session. So though my experience as a female has been much more fortunate than a lot of other females, I still feel those injustices.
I mean, music is often a thing that people turn to when they're feeling, well, and then when they're feeling anything, to be honest. Is that how you want to change the world? Is that the power of your music?
It's such an epic statement.
I mean,
I know,
and it's self-aggrandizing. But so I mean, I know it's embarrassing to say this is how I want to change the world, but everybody does in their own little way.
Everybody does. I completely agree with you, and I can't say that that's my way of doing it because I'm not doing it for that reason. But I think I contribute something definitely by being a songwriter and helping people feel like either that they can relate to someone who's going through the same thing, or that makes them question how they think about the world, what they want out of life. That's always been at the core of my songwriting. It's never been about writing a fluffy love song, even though I love fluffy love songs.
we all love fluffy love songs, but why is it that so much of commercial radio and commercial music industry is all geared the same way? As somebody who's been in it, can you just explain why?
I think people find it risky to have an artist who has a strong opinion. Or maybe they just think, oh, people don't want to think about that. They just want to, drive to work and listen to a song that's going to make them feel uplifted.
Have you been told by music executives, don't write about that stuff?
No, I haven't actually. I haven't, because I was signed to an indie label that was inside of Atlantic Records, so I was given a lot of space to develop and to, write whatever I wanted to.
But would you say too many artists, cave in to the ways of the industry or the demands of the industry?
Yeah, definitely, because they're not thinking. I think what happens is that their main goal is to succeed, and they've got a pressure to do that and to be in the charts. So I think that sometimes the message comes second to that. I don't know if that's fair.
Well, it must be easy to get buried, mustn't it? Once you have a little bit of success, you have to replicate it. You have to do it again and again and again.
Yeah, totally. Like, I'm so happy with how my career's gone because I've always had success, but I've never had like a massive, globally successful album. And I think that's been really beneficial to me as an artist, because if I'd had that on my first record, I think my career would have gone very differently and I wouldn't have had as much creative freedom.
And how do you see your journey now?
Who knows? I do not know what to expect for this fourth record, but I feel very positive and confident about it. I think this is my best record to date.
Can we go back to, I don't want to make you cry again, but can we go back to America?
Yes.
Because it was interesting that you said America was the thing that kind of had got you thinking more. And obviously, your single about Hollywood and the line in that about being obsessed with America is obviously something that you felt for a while. I mean, where was that referring to anything in particular?
I think probably that was referring to tabloid culture at the time and American celebrities. But that formed part of social commentary in my songwriting, and that's something that's always been there. So
what do you mean by tabloid culture? Just flesh it out a bit.
Again, it's going back to how women were documented in media and seeing, these like size zero tabloid headlines, or like, I don't know, with artists like Lily Allen, she was always in the tabloids. It felt like something was changing, and I wanted to write about that because we have this image of Hollywood being very glamorous and perfect, as it is in the movies, and I wanted to talk about how that wasn't the case for me. That's not how I saw things. I don't see things in a fantasy way. I want to see things for how they really are.
And can I ask you about Wales and how big a thing Wales is in your life? Because I mean, when you say you grew up in Wales, what was your growing up in Wales like? Because you don't sound very Welsh, apart from anything else.
I know, I'm so sad.
Did you ever?
I did, yeah. Yeah, up until I was about 11, and then I went to a girls' school and started to, I think, adjust my accent, really, so that I fit in a bit more.
Where was the school?
Haberdashers in Monmouth. And also I was surrounded by a lot of girls who'd come from affluent backgrounds. They, you know, spoke a bit more eloquently. And so I just started to change my accent to fit in, I think. But after that, I moved to Greece when I was 16. So I then went to an international school. So my accent just became whatever, just like a nondescript accent.
So what is your identity then?
So my identity is Greek Welsh. And
in that order?
yeah, I would, well, there's no order really, but I think because I haven't spent as much time in Greece, sometimes I feel like I want to explore that side a bit more. So I always say Greek Welsh, but the fact is that I've lived in Wales for much of my life in a market town called Abergavenny. It's very beautiful, quiet. But my Greek side has really influenced me. The culture there is really rich, and the music there melodically is very rich. So that's also influenced my music a lot too.
Is it your mother or father who's?
It's my dad,
so,
yeah.
Right. And so have you got a big Greek family
Yeah.
there that you see and are in touch with?
Yes,
yeah.
I do, yeah. I think my fiery, like passionate side for sure. But I think a lot of my creative side comes from my Greek side too.
And so where do you feel about Europe and Brexit and all of that as a Greek Welsh person?
It's just tragic. That's how it feels to me. It feels like it shouldn't have happened. It is strange being dual nationality because you always feel slightly torn either way, wherever you are.
I mean, how do you, I mean, what we've seen over this last couple of years here is this sort of rise of you know, the small end nationalism. And not necessarily, I don't mean nasty nationalism, but there has just generally been a sort of a bigger sense of being British and Britain standing on its own and Britain going off and doing its own thing.
Yeah, and this kind of us and them mentality.
Are you able to join? You're not able to join in with that at all, then?
No, no. I don't feel that way at all. I don't feel whatever British means at the moment. I don't feel it, and I hope that doesn't sound harsh. I wonder if other people feel the same. I am British, but I don't feel it because I don't relate to like what it's starting to mean.
What do you feel it's starting to mean?
That we're like excluding people. Again, it comes back to this anti-human thing. And it feels extremely wrong.
Do you think we will end up coming back? And do you think these things are cyclical?
I hope so. I do think they're cyclical. I really do. And I think that's why it's been so difficult the past 3 or 4 years, because what we're experiencing is like a seismic shift in culture. And when that happens, there's always going to be people who don't want culture to change. So I'd like to think this is why these acts of violence and hatred are happening, and why people seem to be regressing as opposed to progressing. So I really hope that in 2 generations, it's going to be a different story, but I can't tell you.
So you're going out on tour as well soon, aren't you? I mean, I mean, are you taking a message out with you of sort of the love and unity bit, if you like?
I don't know.
Is that going to be part of the show?
No, I think there's a strong nature theme to my show. And also, I don't feel like I can talk about these things all the time. And it's, you know, if I'm asked about it, I'm happy to talk about it, but it's also not my place to ram it down people's throats. I think my music, as like cliches as this sounds, it does speak for itself. And I put a lot of my thoughts into music because I am a slower thinker. I think about things slowly and then I make a song, and that's how I like to present my ideas. So it's more difficult for me to talk about these things in person. So I probably won't be chatting about it when I'm on the road, but yeah, I do have a tour coming up. I'm playing Royal Albert Hall on 3rd of May, and I've got, I think, 5 more dates in the UK, in and around the UK.
I mean, you went to the Oxford Union and spoke to students there, and you know, and I watched you there talking about how you thought, you know, the power of music was to be a sort of social commentary on the time. Is that what you're doing? I mean, do you think your new record tells us something about where we are right right now?
I do, but I definitely didn't do it on purpose. Again, I'm not really in charge of what I want to write. The idea just comes, and then what comes up, and I do usually think about things for about a month. So I might write down a line, and then a month later I'll come back with a better informed perspective on it, and I write about it. So it's, I wouldn't go as far as saying this is like a political record, but there are songs on there that definitely reflect what we are experiencing.
And what's happened to your following? Has your following stayed loyal?
Yeah.
Because your albums, you sold albums without huge amounts of promotion and airplay on the radio because you had this very loyal following.
Exactly.
Are they still there? I mean, and are they still diamonds? I mean, I don't know.
I think they're still there. I mean, they seem to be online because that's a good gauge for when I communicate with them. You know, even, for example, with having time off, I haven't felt pressured to come back at all, like at all. And I think my fans appreciate that, because the reason they've connected with me is not because I'm in magazines every day. It's because my music has said something to them and it's spoken to them. So I mean, I hope that I hope they're still there. I'm pretty sure they are. They're waiting, very impatient.
Well, you'll find out pretty soon, won't you?
Yeah. I know they're impatient. They're like, where's the damn album?
I do like to ask everybody if they've got a sort of a slightly far out way of changing the world that they know would be hard to deliver, or maybe impossible. I don't know whether you have any kind of the world according to Marina things that, you know, if you could change things and make them a certain way, what would it be? I
did have an idea recently. I was like, what if when you traveled to another country, you immediately started speaking the language of the country as soon as you crossed the border? Like you had some chip in your brain that would probably help a lot, because you'd be able to understand people's points of view, people that you might, not be able to connect to otherwise. So that's my way of half changing the world.
Well, Marina, thank you very much indeed for coming in to share your ways to change the world. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And the album is out?
It's out on the 26th of April, Love and Fear.
Brilliant. Well, good luck with it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.